Hi class, in lesson 5.2 we are going to be looking at ratio representations. Learning targets for today, we will be writing comparisons using ratios, applying qualitative and quantitative reasoning to compare ratios, distinguishing between part-to-part and part-to-whole ratios, and finally writing equivalent ratios. Let's take a look at problem 1 on page 316 to get started. It says up at the top that Lanterton Middle School is adopting a new nickname. They have narrowed their search to the following two names. We have the lynx or the leopards that the students have to choose from. So it says that each homeroom reported the correct results of the nickname survey for the entire school differently. So what I want you to do is take a look at all of the bullet points for homeroom 6A, 6B, 7A, and 7B. After you read over how each homeroom reported the correct results, I want you to describe the meaning of each statement. It asks you to do that down in number 1 at the bottom of page 316. When you're done with that, then take a look at number 2 as well. It says, which statement gives you the best information about the survey results, and explain your reasoning. So go ahead and do number 1 and number 2. Again, for number 1, just write your answers below each of the statements describing the meaning for each of those 4 homerooms. I'll give you a couple minutes with your groups. Let's take a look at homeroom 6A and 6B. For homeroom 6A, these results tell us that for every 240 students who prefer lynx, there will be 160 students who then prefer leopards. For homeroom 6B, these results are only telling me how many more students preferred lynx. If we take a look at homeroom 7A, these results tell me that for every 3 students who prefer lynx, there will be 2 students who prefer leopards. And for homeroom 7B, these results tell me that for every 5 students that were surveyed, 3 of them will prefer lynx. So based off of each of your statements for all 4 of the homerooms, which one do you think gives the best information about the survey results, and explain your reasoning? Answers are indeed going to vary, but if you do look at homeroom 6A, most students will probably navigate to those results because the total numbers are given for the entire school. If we take a look up at the top of page 317, let's consider the statement 3 out of 5 students chose lynx over leopards as Lanterton Middle School's new nickname. You can write this relationship in different ways. We talked about in lesson 5.1 how we can look at part-to-whole and part-to-part relationships with ratios. So if you look at the first example, if you write it as a part-to-whole ratio or in fraction form, you can see we have 3 students that chose lynx to 5 total students. We have 2 students that chose leopards to 5 total students. So those are examples of part-to-whole relationships. If we look at the part-to-part ratios, we have 3 students who chose lynx to 2 students that chose leopards. And just one other thing that I want to point out as well is that, remember, in addition to fraction form, we can also write ratios using colons. Let's take a look at number 3 at the bottom of page 317. It says to complete the table by writing each homeroom statement 2 different ways. Use the results reported by each homeroom and the fact that 400 total students were surveyed. This is why we talked about people probably navigating to use homeroom 6A's results, because we saw the total numbers that were given for the entire school. So remember that 400 total students were surveyed. So if you look at the table, you're going to look at the part-to-whole relationship in this section, and you're going to look at the part-to-part relationship in the column on the right. So go ahead and get that table filled out with your group members. So here is what your table should look like. Let's take a look at each homeroom separately. If we look at 6A first, we have 240 chose links to 400 total students, and we have 160 chose leopards to 400 total students. That would be the part-to-whole ratios that we are looking at. For the part-to-part ratios then, it would be 240 links to 160 leopards. For homeroom 6B, we have 240 that chose links to 400 total students, and we have 160 that chose leopards to 400 total students. Those are the part-to-whole relationships. The part-to-part ratio that we would be looking at then would be 240 links to 160 leopards. For homeroom 7A, we have 3 that chose links to 5 total students, and we have 2 that chose leopards to 5 total students. Those are your part-to-whole ratios, and the part-to-part would be 3 links to 2 leopards. And finally, for 7B, we have 3 that chose links to 5 total students. We have 2 that chose leopards to 5 total students. Those are your part-to-whole ratios. And finally, we have 3 links to 2 leopards. That would be the part-to-part ratios. Let's go ahead and turn to the top of page 318 for letter A and for letter B. It says compare the part-to-whole ratios that you wrote for homeroom 6A and 6B to those for homeroom 7A and 7B. What do you notice about those part-to-whole ratios? And for letter B, compare the part-to-part ratios that you wrote for homeroom 6A and 6B to those for homeroom 7A and 7B. Also, what do you notice about those part-to-part ratios? Go ahead and work on letter A and letter B. If we take a look at letter A, the part-to-whole ratio for homeroom 6A was 240 to 400, and the part-to-whole ratio for homeroom 7A was 3 to 5. Those ratios are equivalent. If you look at the part-to-whole ratio for homeroom 6B, it was 160 to 400. The part-to-whole ratio for 7B was 2 to 5. Those ratios are also equivalent. If you look at letter B, the part-to-part ratio for homeroom 6A and 6B was 240 to 160. The part-to-part ratio for homeroom 7A and 7B was 3 to 2. Those ratios are also equivalent. So that's hopefully what you noticed for letter A and letter B, that all of those part-to-whole and part-to-part ratios were equivalent. Let's go ahead and look at problem 2 on page 318, where we will be comparing ratios. Number 1 says that there are 20 6th graders and 30 8th graders in the chess club. Letter A says to write the ratio of 6th graders to 8th graders in the chess club. So I want you to go ahead and answer letter A, and when you are done with that, also answer Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. I have all of the text marked for you for all of the important information that you need to answer in the question. So go ahead and do letter A and then Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3. If I take a look at letter A, my ratio should be 20 to 30. If I take a look at Roman numeral number 1, the ratio of 6th graders to the total number of chess club members is 20 to 50. For Roman numeral 2, the ratio of the number of 8th graders in the club to the total number of chess club members is 30 to 50. And now I have to look at which one is greater. The ratio of 8th graders to the total number of chess club members is greater because 3 to 5 is greater than 2 to 5. You can see that both denominators represent the total number of chess club members. We just really simplified those ratios from 20 to 50 and 30 to 50. Let's go ahead and turn to the top of page 319. We are going to use the same statement from number 1 on page 318, that there are 20 6th graders and 30 8th graders in the chess club. So go ahead and answer letter B. and also answer Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3 with your group members. Again, I have the text marked for you. So if you take a look at letter B, the ratio that you should have is 30 to 20. For Roman numeral number 1, the ratio of the total number of chess club members to the number of 8th grade club members is 50 to 30. For Roman numeral number 2, the ratio of the total number of chess club members to the number of 6th grade club members is 50 to 20. And for Roman numeral number 3, which is greater, the ratio of all chess club members to 6th grade members is greater, because 5 to 2 or 50 to 20 would be greater than 5 to 3 or 50 to 30. Let's take a look at number 2 on the bottom of page 319. It says a local mall owner is trying to attract more middle school students on the weekends to increase business from both the students and their parents or guardians. The owner collected the data shown from local middle schools for the question, which activity should the mall add to increase business? So take a look at the table and study each of the activities and look at the 6th graders and 7th graders and the activities that they do prefer. And what we are going to do is answer the question on the top of page 320 based off of this table. So at the top of page 320, it says that Manny said that the ratio of 6th graders who prefer roller skating is the same as the ratio of 7th graders who prefer watching movies. Donnie thought he was wrong because the number of 7th graders who prefer watching movies is larger than the number of 6th graders who prefer roller skating. Who is correct, and explain your reasoning? So refer back to the table, take a look at the ratios for each of those activities, and answer this question with your group members. Based off of the ratios from the table, the 6th graders who prefer roller skating is 120 to 240, and the ratio for the 7th graders who prefer watching movies is 180 to 360. Manny would be correct because these ratios are equivalent. When you simplify both of these ratios, you will get a ratio of 1 to 2 for both of them. So Manny is correct in his thinking. Let's take a look at number 3 down at the bottom of page 320. It says a survey of the 6th graders with pets revealed that 20 students prefer cats and 10 students prefer dogs. So go ahead and answer letter A and letter B. How would you compare these two statements using part to whole ratios? And how would you compare these two statements using part-to-part ratios? If you take a look at letter A, out of the 6th graders that were surveyed, 20 to 30 students, 20 out of 30 students prefer cats, and 10 out of 30 students prefer dogs. And for letter B, out of the 6th graders surveyed, the ratio of students who prefer cats to students who prefer dogs is going to be 20 to 10 or 2 to 1. Your homework for tonight is going to be the Talk the Talk activity on page 321 and 322. I would like you to do number 1 and number 2. Please know that number 2 continues on to the next page. You have letters A through F that you need to complete. That is it for lesson 5.2 on ratio representations. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.